Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. Thank you for joining me. It is so important that you're taking time to rejuvenate, recharge, recenter yourself in the hustle, bustle, and stress of your life, whatever that looks like for you. If it's taking 5 minutes to go on a walk, maybe it's listening to a podcast, maybe it's taking more time reading and self-reflection. Maybe it's doing something fun like playing pickleball or picking up dinner with a friend. Whatever that looks like for you, make time for it. It is so key and important and essential to your emotional and mental well-being. In this week's episode, we are going to be talking about healing the inner wounds of shame and negative beliefs with my guest. Christina Woods is an internationally recognized clinical hypnotherapist, rapid transformational therapist, empowerment coach, and Reiki master. She empowers women to overcome self-sabotage, break free from limitations, and discover their inner strength to create fulfilling lives. As the founder of Wise Woods Hypnotherapy, Christina's signature method combines hypnotherapy, coaching, and energy healing for profound personal transformation. We talk all about self-sabotage and how our negative beliefs play a role in how we're sabotaging ourselves. And we all do it in such, I would say, ways that we don't even recognize, like procrastination or really thinking that something's not possible for us. Maybe you're thinking love isn't possible, or the job you want, or the income you want, whatever that looks like. That can come across as self-sabotage. And that shame can really take us down the dark abyss. So this is a really important episode. And the journal that I create is free. You can use it as you're doing self-reflection, listening to the podcast. It's available at kristendboyce.com/free resources. We will link it in the show notes. So I encourage you to do some self-reflection when you're listening to this episode. Think about what beliefs do you have about yourself and the shame stories, and what might you be doing to self-sabotage? And then we talk about really how to heal that. So I hope this is a powerful conversation for you in your healing journey. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. Christina Woods, I'm so excited you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here, Kristen.
You're in Southern California where the sun is shining, and I'm in Indianapolis where we got the leaves falling. So it's a perfect time for this conversation as we're headed into transition with the seasons. It can bring up a lot for people. But I first want to just have you introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thank you. So I am a clinical hypnotherapist, an empowerment coach, an energy healer. And so I blend all of those together to work and empower women. And this is my second career. So we'll probably talk a little bit about that because that definitely involved closing a chapter.
Oh, I want to hear about that. So tell us what your first career was.
So I had a 30-year corporate career actually in the higher education space. And I actually thought I'd probably end up doing that forever until life had different plans for me. And much of that had to do actually with wonderful therapists and other people in my life that helped me heal and be capable of closing that chapter. But a lot of that had to do with, as I was growing up, like many women, I discovered that being a little perfectionist and overachiever helped me get through my life. And throughout my childhood, teenage years, I didn't realize until actually I was about 50 that I was burying quite a lot of trauma, childhood trauma, just the way that I was raised, that my coping skills were just do everything perfect and no one will really see what's going on. And it served me very, very well. As you know, that serves people well. You get a lot of praise that way. And that's really how I built a great corporate career until my body, my marriage, my bank account, everything just said, what is going on? And so my marriage after 25 years crumbled, my corporate career, I wasn't happy. I had all the things. I had the VP status, I had a great successful salary, all the things, but my body and everything said, wait a second, this doesn't feel good. And so I decided to get really curious about why? Why do I keep getting promotions and my credit cards keep going up? Or why do I keep going to food? Or why do I feel this way when my spouse says this? And so I really just took the time to get really curious. And it was during that process I realized this isn't the career that I want to do anymore. And why do I do those things? And it was during that journey that I decided to leave that career and do what I do now. And boy, oh boy, just learned a lot of things about myself.
Oh, yeah. And that's scary for a lot of people to switch. You and I have a similar path in terms of the corporate. I've come from corporate America, Fortune 500 companies, switch paths. How did you get the courage up? Like, it sounds like everything crumbled.
Everything crumbled. Yeah.
And quote unquote, security of a job, a marriage, all of that kind of your health fell apart.
Oh, it was a slow process, but I think when you get to a point where you can't sustain it anymore, your health, you're not happy. And yeah, I was single at that point. You still have a marriage, you still have kids in college, you still have college tuition to pay, you still have all the things. And you certainly obviously have at that point, after 30 years, credibility in an industry when you can sort of do it with your eyes closed. But what I didn't have was happiness. And I got really curious about why do I always feel like I'm a bad person? Because I had a little voice in my head that you're bad, you're bad. And I thought, I really need to get curious. So I dove into therapy, and that's actually how I found hypnotherapy. It wasn't anything I ever even dreamed of doing. And a friend recommended it, and I found someone, and she recommended from there EMDR, and I did the two together, and it really changed my life. But what I found was reasons why I felt I was bad, and all the shame and the guilt and the trauma that I literally had put in a box, didn't even want to see it or feel it. And as I opened the box and dealt with the shame and the guilt and the people pleasing that I had really not understood, I thought, no, that's just me wanting to be nice and please everyone. And I'm the one at corporate, they can call it midnight and say, we need that report in the morning. Oh, I'm the one who'll do it. Or the super mom that will do everything and travel and bring soccer snacks in the morning. And no, really, I'm the one that says yes to everyone because I feel my validation has to come from the outside. So it was getting really curious and finding out, boy, oh boy, there's a me inside that needs to feel validation from the inside and having compassion for myself on the inside. And through different modalities, did I realize that none of that was being seen or heard. And so I had to find a way to be that inner parent for myself. And it was through that journey that I did do that and had the courage to leave something so stable and realize, wow, there are people walking around, as you know, but it was when you're 50 and you realize I'm not bad. I remember the day my therapist stood up and clapped for me because I said, I'm not bad. I'm not bad. Wow. I realized I'm not bad. She's like, you're right. You're not bad. Yay. And I realized there's so many people out there with a shell on. And when you're able to take these beliefs about ourselves off and lift them off and just be our authentic selves and start to trust ourselves and love ourselves, then yeah, you have the courage to leave a corporate career and you have the courage to say no and have boundaries and not sabotage and all the things that we hear about. But when you have beliefs about yourself that aren't true, it's just so cloudy.
It is. Okay, so let's talk about the shame story of I am bad. You know how many people feel that way?
Oh, yeah.
All of us, I think, at some point, if we're really looking within and we're really honest with ourselves, there's been moments, or maybe it's a theme of I am bad. Yeah. What did you connect to how that started? Because a lot of people are like, how did I even become this belief about myself that I am bad? What was it connected to?
It was connected to how I was raised when I was younger. I was raised by a single mother, and I was raised lower middle class, but in a middle class neighborhood. But we were lower on the lower income level by a single mom, oldest of four. And so there was a lot of embarrassment about not having the right things or clothes or enough or scraping by, or my mother didn't have as good of a job as the other mothers. And just these little moments where I felt judgment by teachers or other parents, or just little moments, meaning and things that I attach. We didn't have as good of a car, or my mom couldn't come to the things that other parents could come, or I couldn't do the dance, or I didn't have the fancy snacks that other kids had. So it's just these little things that started to add up, and embarrassment and shame. And then I actually had sexual molestation when I was a child. And obviously that can put a lot of shame and I am bad, and hid that literally from everyone, including myself, and for 45 years, and tucked that aside, even to the point where I told myself, I don't think it was that bad. I don't think that really happened. And that probably wasn't that bad until later in life. I said, wait a second, of course that was bad. I say that openly because I think there's other people that have done that. And so,
100%.
yeah, like, what do you mean that's not that bad? Of course that's that bad. Because I think unless we think we're attacked in a back alley or something, or stuff in a trunk, that has to be that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I had convinced myself that that wasn't that bad until, of course, I had someone help me through that and realize it was. So it was growing up different. And when you grow up different, you don't feel connected to others. It's easy to feel rejected.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. It's so helpful because this is the story for so many people.
It is. And when you don't want to be a burden to a parent who's working hard. And when I had a teenage mother, and so, did she handle everything right? Or was she over emotional? All the things. Yes. And so do you have that support? Are you seen? No, you're not. And you're growing up with a mother who's growing up as well. And you don't want to be a burden. So you evolve as well. And you don't even understand and realize as a child, but your subconscious mind and these beliefs, they don't know how old we are. So we become 30, 40 something years old. And how they evolve for me, even in my marriage, was no one's there for me. No one wants to help me. No one wants to support me. So even when I did have a supportive spouse, my belief was he wasn't supportive. So I pushed that away completely. And it just became my reality because it was what I believed.
Yes. So if anyone's listening right now and you're going, oh, I relate to what Christina's saying, I really relate to what you're saying. I think the key here is you decided, I'm going to look within. Yes. I'm going to face this negative belief. And then the other one I hear a lot is I am a burden. You said that. You said, I don't want to burden anyone. I didn't want to burden my mom, my teenage mom.
Right. And that was huge. And, one of the silly things that seemed silly at the time was daycare was such a big deal. And this had happened in the family of our babysitter, daycare, a neighbor's uncle had been part of the trauma. And I distinctly remember I can't mess up the daycare because my mother relies on the daycare for her work. This is real. And if I mess up the daycare, she wouldn't be able to go to work and can't pay the bills and we can't eat, because I would hear my mother talk about, thank goodness we have this daycare and this family. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to go to work. So from an 8-year-old, I can't mess that up because that's everything to my mother and my family. I'm just going to keep this quiet. And so why be a burden? I would be a burden. Of course, my mother would have done anything to change that, but that wasn't the belief at that time.
This is survival.
Survival.
This is like, we need this in order for my mom to pay the bills. So I have food on the table and a place to live. And so it really was a matter of survival. I have to just bury this so we can survive.
Yes. And even now when I work with clients, we look back and we say, I should know now, I can move on. What is the belief and the feeling I have? And to this day, I have to nurture those parts of me and have compassion for those parts of me that still feel like a burden, and know that I have to have compassion and courage and self-compassion and take moments every single day. And that is how I built the courage to leave a corporate career and know I'm worthy. And I say that because everybody can do that and close a chapter and create a new chapter. It's just we have to take the time to look and say, what do we really need? And are we not allowing ourselves to get curious about and notice? Because it wasn't any fun to look at, why did I feel bad? Why did I have some of these habits? Why did I have a spending habit and an eating habit and a yelling habit? I didn't like looking at those things, but I knew that I wasn't bad. But why did I think that?
Yeah. I like that you're saying I had to look at my habits, basically our patterns. Why did
Yes.
I have the eating? Why did I have the yelling, the spending? Why was I doing that? Kind of self medicating unconsciously,
Yes.
right? This
Yes.
I'm bad belief. Would you
Yes.
say?
Absolutely. All of those things are sabotage, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is deep work. So we haven't talked much about hypnosis on the
Sure.
podcast. I know that was one of the modalities. I'm an EMDR therapist. So done some, I mean, we've talked a lot about EMDR because I love it. I've done it
Oh,
myself.
it's
I love
amazing.
it with my clients. It stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing for those that aren't familiar with it. It's a trauma modality. Let's talk about a little bit about hypnotherapy as it relates to shame and these beliefs.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what is hypnotherapy. If people are like, I've heard the term, but I don't really know what it is. What does it do? Can you explain
Yeah.
it to us?
Sure. And even when I started doing it, my kids laughed and said, oh no, mom, you're like the guy at the fair now. You're going to do the silly things with the chickens and so on. But in all seriousness, there's a place in our consciousness where we're very open to suggestions. And I think in America, we don't like the idea of thinking, I don't want to be suggestible. I don't want to be open to suggestible. I might be manipulated. And where we go with hypnotherapy in a therapeutic standpoint is that we're able to quiet our conscious analytical mind. So we all have seen that image of the iceberg where a little bit is above the water and 95% is below the water. And if you think of that iceberg, 5% that's above the water is our conscious mind, and 95% below the water is our subconscious mind. And so our subconscious mind, the bulk of the iceberg, is what's calling the shots. It's how we feel and see the world. It's the lens that we look through the world and how we feel about ourselves and the world around us. So when we really want to make deep change and profound change and see what's really going on, it's really important to go right there in the subconscious mind. So through hypnotherapy, we can quiet the little voice that says, well, that's silly. That happened when you were 8, or it doesn't matter what people think, or you got to do that for work. Suck it up, buttercup kind of stuff that we tell ourselves. We quiet that and we go to the part of the mind that is very open to suggestions. And it feels like a meditation. You're not in a trance state where you have no control. I don't think anyone would want to sign up for that. You talk the entire time and we get to the root of, for example, why do you feel bad? Or why are you sabotaging this? Or why do you keep dating people that are nasty to you? Or why do you keep doing this, or smoking, or whatever it might be, whatever the sabotage might be? And we're able to go back to moments where that belief or that habit or whatever we're working with was created. And the mind will go back to moments where the meaning was attached to that. And you're able to put together sort of a string of stories and the feeling that was created and find out where the blocks were created. And it's like when you find out Santa Claus isn't real for the first time, you go, oh, you don't have to go back every single time you thought he was real for it not to be real. You just have an epiphany and go, okay. And you move forward. It's a paradigm shift. So it's the same in hypnotherapy. You look at something differently. It's a shift and you say, oh, now I see things differently. I have a different meaning attached to it. And you're able to move forward with the mind shift about, okay, now I see why I thought that way and felt that way, and I can shift differently. And to create a different, through neuroplasticity, to create a different way of thinking and believing, the mind has to learn by repetition or move towards what's familiar. So in hypnotherapy, you get an audio to listen to. for about 21 days to 30 days. And it's all customized. So whatever you're working on, you'll have about a 20 minutes audio to listen to. And that just helps you move through the transition even faster.
So I've done guided, what I explain to people is, to your point, is a guided meditation. People don't realize that. They think they're going to count down. I mean, there could
like
be
a
some
clock
counting.
or something.
You have this like what's in the movies or what you see on stage. Like I remember in college, they're like, come on up, we're going to do it. It was all fake. Well, that part was fake. I mean,
it's all entertainment.
It's all entertainment. So it's not that. It is literally a relaxation is how I experienced it. It's like getting super relaxed in your nervous system and quieting the mind so you can access these different parts. Yes. And how did you, so let's kind of make this real so people can conceptualize this. I am bad. So what would be the hypnosis exercise for I am bad? Like how would somebody use hypnosis to deal with that shame belief?
Yeah. So we would go back to the root of why do you feel that way? Because I could give you an audio that would just be full of positive affirmations, which would help you temporarily feel a little bit better because the words you say to yourself are powerful. I am good. I feel wonderful. That would make you feel better for a little bit. But we want to get to the root of why do you feel bad? So we would go back to the very root cause and reason, the very first time you ever felt bad. So I'm going to take you back to a scene, place, event, and time to why you ever felt bad. And you might go back, and we'd go back to 3 or 4 different scenes and moments to when you felt bad. And these might be scenes and moments that for you aren't relevant. You might be eating cereal and watching TV and your brother walked in and said something. You might be at school and the teacher made a remark, or you're playing on the playground, or your mom picked you up late from soccer practice. So these are little moments and scenes, but we get the feeling. So the scene doesn't matter. The details don't matter. People get a little stuck on those things, but the feeling is what matters. So we string them together and you're able to see, yeah, I felt bad. I felt like I was the only one on that playground and everyone was picking on me. I felt rejected. And when my brother keeps saying that, I felt like he never loved me and I felt rejected. And when my mom would pick me up late, I felt like out of all the 6 kids, I was always the one left in the dark, waiting, and all the other kids were gone. Well, now you know that it was mom's trying to pick up everyone on time, and different meaning we can attach to it. So we're going to go to the root so we can see it first and get to the root of why it was there. And it doesn't mean that you did or didn't have a fabulous childhood or not. Some of us do, and some of us really don't. You know, it doesn't mean this or that, but what is the meaning we attach to it? So we from there can give it a different meaning. And that's what we do in the audio.
And so someone says, okay, I get to the root. And then I see a pattern of, let's say somebody, because this happens a lot with many, many people, they start eating to self-soothe, to comfort themselves, or they associate food and they use that as a coping strategy.
Sure.
Then after we work through the root, we would tackle some of those other patterns.
Sure. Absolutely. So getting to the root is part of it. And then making the belief familiar is really where a lot of work comes, because the mind doesn't want to make anything new familiar. It's going to fight like crazy because, I mean, that's what kept you safe. So it's like, no way are we going to do anything different. This has kept you safe for 40, 50, whatever years. So making something new familiar. So yes, breathing exercises, journaling, listening to the audio, doing a great pivot exercise throughout the day for people that I like to teach them is, let's say you're at work and someone says something, or it's usually at home or at work, and we start to feel like we're going to go into sabotage or reaction or something. You know, we can just, these pausing moments, right? Just being able to pause, one, is a great skill that you can even get to that point, to pause and say, hold on, I'm starting to feel that moment when I want to attack or go, let's pause. And even think of a moment, maybe when I have felt calm. And when's a moment I felt calm in the last 24 hours? And maybe it's when I pet my dog or was on a walk and saw a stranger and they smiled at me or whatever. And close your eyes and think of that moment. We can all do this in like a minute. Think of a moment in the last 24 hours, last 3 days, I felt calm. and allow your body to just feel that moment, because we get more of what we feel. So if you want to feel calm, if you want to feel approved of, if we're with our partner or with someone and we don't feel approved of, think of a moment in the last 24 hours, 3 days, I felt approved of. It's going to be a moment where I promise you don't think of. It could be, again, was at the grocery store and I helped somebody pick something up, or the checkout person was kind. Let that moment move through your body, be in your body, because when that feeling, it can pivot how you feel. Then it sort of, pivots you to then respond to wherever you're at, and you can then move forward. So it's just a pivot exercise to recalibrate. And these recalibration exercises allow us to get into a new feeling, to make something become a new habit.
I like that, because habits are hard. Like you said, they're so hard to shift. I mean, we are so embedded in our habits because they create a certain outcome. We're like, well, that's predictable. And that's where self-sabotage can come in. It's like, we know it's not good for us, and yet there's just a predictability about it.
So, and the audios work really strong, but of course, doing exercises and practicing every day is only going to support that more.
Talk about self-sabotage and how that plays a role. And if I have the belief I am bad, okay, how would self-sabotage play into that belief?
Yeah, if when we sabotage, that belief is I'm not enough, so why bother? Or let me destroy it so that I won't get judged, so that I won't get rejected, because we all have a need to feel connection and not get rejected. Or why bother if I'm not enough? Then I won't have the possibility of not feeling unloved or unseen or unheard. So most of the time it's rooted in I'm not enough, or I am different, or there's a very common belief, I'm not enough, I'm different. But many people have a belief that isn't even available to me. It's rooted in that is something other people have. So I'm going to sabotage it because love, that isn't even available to me. It never has been and it never will be. Or money. I've got this good job, but I'm going to sabotage it. I'm going to sabotage my credit. I'm going to sabotage this love relationship because happiness has never been available to me. It never will be.
I have this. I'll tell clients, you have the F it's.
Oh, yes. That's a great one.
Just F it. Screw it. It's not going to happen anyway. So F it. I'm just going to eat the whole cake, or I'm just going to binge drink, or I'm going to, whatever. Because you don't think it's a possibility, and you've already fallen off of whatever goal you set. So F it.
Yes. That's fun. That's a good way to call it.
But you got the F it's. It's a defense, right? Because you think I already failed. So screw it. Yeah. What's the point of even me trying? Would you say that's like a classic self-sabotage?
That's a classic.
What other ways do people self-sabotage? If they're like, I don't really do that, or they don't recognize they're doing it, how do we help people go, well, this is what it looks like, and this is your tells to say, oop, you're sabotaging yourself?
Our words, the mind can't accept these conflicting beliefs. So in relationships, you'll hear it in 30 seconds with people. I want a relationship, but I don't have any time. I want a relationship, but no one is ever available. Or sleep is a huge sabotage. Their health or work or just a healthy lifestyle in general, but resisting sleep, staying on your phone. When everybody knows, don't stay on your phone at night or don't have the blue light. We all know these things, right? Sleep hygiene, quiet your mind at night. You don't have to be a meditator. You don't have to do all these things, but we all know it by now. We've probably read enough that maybe turn off the TV, maybe read a little or journal, or just at least put the phone down, right? And if you wake up at 1 a.m, don't pick up the phone. But that is a form of sabotage. Sleep's a big one. Just procrastination. But love relationships, poor health choices, procrastination, of course, that's a big one. I work with a lot of high achieving women, and they would much rather procrastinate and not get it done than be judged.
Ooh, we're all so afraid of judgment and criticism and rejection. It's deep. It's a deep wound.
Yeah. And they're very successful. So if they have a level up, and get their business to the next level or do something, they usually will come to me and say, I want you to help me get here. But it's usually because the procrastination has just hit an all-time high, and that up leveling has so much fear and judgment wrapped around it. Yeah.
It's deep. The fear
it is deep.
Fear is so deep, I think, on self-sabotage. I really think it's at the root.
Yeah. And I think it's okay for people to realize just because you've worked on something doesn't mean you don't need to work on it again, because it's in layers.
Layer by layer is what I say. Layer by layer by layer. And you're like, well, I thought I worked on that and I was all over that. I'm like,
no,
welcome to the club, because it's just how the human is designed. When you least expect it,
yes,
you can have one of the layers pop up. And you're like, well, I was fine 2 seconds ago and I heard a sound or I smelled something or someone said something to me and I'm in it. And I'm like, yeah,
and
I feel you.
The holidays coming up, it'll all come back. Like you said, a smell or a sound or a family member will say something or a song will come up. And in our evolution, our healing evolution, maybe you have gone through a lot of layers. Now you're ready to go through some more layers.
It's like expansion. I think of it as like a butterfly. It's like you're in the cocoon and you're like, okay, I'm going to be in this cocoon because this is my safe place, but yet you're stuck. And yet in order to evolve, you're going to have to come out of the cocoon into this world. And then in order to be the butterfly and fly, you're going to have to take risks.
Absolutely.
And it's getting that risk aversion kind of, okay, nurturing yourself, to use what you're saying, nurturing and self-compassion. When you talk about the belief I am bad and you talk about hypnosis, you also are a rapid transformational therapist.
Yes.
So what does that mean for people? Like, what does that entail?
Yeah. Rapid transformational therapy, or RTT, is the method of hypnotherapy that I basically do. I do other types of hypnotherapy, but that is Marissa Peer's RTT hypnotherapy. And it's a really fast method. It gets to the root, it disrupts it. And it's really fabulous because she's really groundbreaking in her method, in that she's a little rebel too, just in terms of, and sort of like EMDR, when it comes out, it's like, look, it doesn't have to take forever. You can get to the root. You don't have to go every week forever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But also you can get to the root. It can be intense. You can get to what you need to do, and you can get healed. And it's just a more revolutionary method. It's another option for people to get to the root and get to the other side of their healing.
When you get to the root, okay, so we're talking about achievers, overfunctioners. Hello. That's been my journey, like just this overfunctioner. And as a mom, did you see it where you would like you said, I get the snacks for this. And did you see this, what you didn't get in your childhood? You were kind of swinging the pendulum and almost making up for it as a mom. Talk a little bit about that, because we don't talk about that enough.
Not only as a mom, but as, a working mother who, when I would travel, just how I would leave notes and details about every practice and meal, like as if my husband and my teenage children, they didn't know how to feed themselves or something. But it was absolutely just, over the top. And I think about my nervous system at that time was so dysregulated, and how that must have felt in the home. But I didn't know how to regulate my nervous system. And I was always finding ways that if I can control everything, that feels more calm to me. I never wanted my children to feel like I felt in the morning getting ready for school. So I sort of went over the top with my kids, in that everything's going to be perfect in the morning before we go to school. And it probably felt like I was a little robot every morning, trying to make everything seem perfect when they probably just wanted to chill out and relax. But my mornings growing up as a child were very, very chaotic.
Yes. I think control is such a huge piece for when we had chaotic childhoods or inconsistencies or absent neglect of any kind, right? Control becomes the driving force.
Yes. Yes. And it was so based in fear. Everything, it would keep me up at night. everything I had to have control over. And it was just, dire need for survival. And whether that was everything to do with their school, food in the house, every little detail. And in my soul, believe that just meant I was being a good mother. I did not understand anything more than that until later, until I had time to breathe and look back and have that bird's eye view of, wow, that was me just trying to feel safe and connected and really just scratching for survival. But it was all about control and the belief that if I do all these things, they will love me more.
Yes. And they won't abandon me and they won't leave
They
me and
won't
they'll
abandon
think I'm
me.
a
Yeah.
great mom and that'll counteract that I'm a bad person or
I'm a
I'm
bad.
bad.
Yep.
They'll think I'm a great mom and I won't feel the same way I felt about my mom.
Yep. They'll all find out I'm really bad inside. Yes.
It's so deep. How do you today work through that control? Because it can show up, I can imagine. My lifelong work is swimming in uncertainty, like learning to swim and just letting go of the outcome because it's an illusion. Like there is no control, but it feels like we have it. How have you worked on that? And how does it show up today?
Yeah. I still regularly go to therapy. I still regularly do EMDR. I do meditations. I have a spiritual practice. I mean, this just is a regular practice for me because I very quickly can go into panic and anxiety, and my nervous system quickly can feel unsafe. But I know the signs now. I know when I start to get into boss mode and work mode, I sort of giggle and laugh now and say, okay, here's that part of me. I must feel unsafe and unsettled. And I start bossing people around or getting really weird with work. And I just sort of take a deep breath and I step back and say, wait, I don't have to work 15 hours today. This is ridiculous. You can go eat dinner now and relax. But a lot of inner child work, a lot of inner parent work, a lot of reading and studying and taking time and realizing I cannot do this by myself. So I have a lot of support, a lot of therapists, and recognizing that it's okay to ask for help and support. That was never, ever anything. I mean, I was afraid to read a self-help book until I was in my 40s. And I thought I had a spiritual practice. I went to retreats and things, but I was afraid because if I did, I might find out why I was bad. And I didn't want to know I was bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I'm the only one either.
No.
So I'm sharing it just because my office now is full of self-help books and this is all I do. But I was afraid. I did not want to know. I did not want to read a Brene Brown or anything like that because I knew there was something in there that I would find out about me. And I was afraid of what that was.
You're the first person to say that. And I
really,
think that is so, I mean, to say that on this podcast, and I've done a lot of episodes. And I thank you for that because I think that's so real to say, I was afraid to see that it's going to reinforce that I am bad and all the things that is wrong with me.
Yeah.
And that being flooded and overwhelmed by that seemed too surmounting to, I didn't want to know all that. So I think that is 100% a real belief for so many people.
That's just a exhausting way to live. It's exhausting. And that was at the point where you can get so exhausted. You're like, you know what? I don't even care if when I find out now why I'm bad, I just want to know why, because there was an intuitive part of me that knew I wasn't. An intuitive part of me, the soulful part of me knew I wasn't. And that was the part that was bright enough to know that helped me get beyond this. Everybody has
soul is the authentic part of you that got buried.
Yes. And everybody has that light inside and it can get buried by things, but we all have that intuitive soul part of us that knows who we are and can help us, our guiding light inside. And that doesn't mean we don't need help or support or tools, but I know when I need boundaries now. I know when I need space. I know when I need to tell people, you know what, I'm going to stay home tonight. And yes, I want to go out and connect with people. And no, I need a little bit of quiet space. And I know it's okay. And I know I'll still be loved. And that was not the case before.
Oh, this is so refreshing because the soul, we just get buried. And so I think my job is I just help people delayer similar to what you're doing to have free that soul and feel safe enough to come out in the world and safe enough to speak truth, like reconnect to your essence, your truth. And so that's the freedom. As we wrap up, if you had to pick one book that was the most transformational book, what would you pick? And I know this is like picking a baby because I love so many books that I love.
Oh, I know. Boy, that's a big one.
Maybe the first one that comes to mind that you're like, this was a really powerful book for me.
Yeah. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is just coming up. It wasn't the first one, but that's just a really big one because that just really shocked me that trauma was stored in my body and that my cells had a memory. And it was sort of revolutionary for me to say, oh, okay, that's why I keep going back and stop beating myself up for things. It helped me understand things. And it wasn't one of the first ones, but it really was sort of a knock on the head. Like, what? Breaking the habit of being okay.
Okay.
Emotions are stuck in my cells.
I love that. Okay, perfect. This is great. Now, where can people find you? If they're like, I like what Christina said, I like her.
Yeah.
How can they find you?
So on Instagram is a good place, and it's Christina.lwoods. And my website is ChristinaLWoods.com. And there's free meditation on there and some other things going on.
Yeah, you have a wealth of resources. So go check out the website. And thank you so much for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your vulnerability with us today. It's changing lives. And I can tell all the work you've done. Just when I meet people, I can tell instantly that they've done, I can just feel it. So
thank you.
I just want to acknowledge that. And that just frees you up to just be this vessel for so much transformation. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.